You guys, we have a real treat today. I love it every time he comes on. I think what he does is truly such a service to us. You guys already know I have such a huge passion and love for Entertainment Tonight as an institution in pop culture. I grew up with it in Olathe, Kansas, and I would rush home and watch it every night. And I was so excited. He is the official Housewives correspondent for Entertainment Tonight. You can go on his Instagram at Brice Sander, and you can look at just a cornucopia of everybody that you would ever want to hear from in the Bravo universe. But he is talk to everybody. I'm telling you, look at all of these interviews. He does the best jobs at just getting the perfect question at the perfect time. And I always look forward to anything that he does. So welcome back to the show, Brice Sander. Thank you so much for being here, dude.
Thank you for having me. Wow. I don't know that what I've done has ever been called a service, but I will take it.
Damn well it's a service. Are you kidding me? Like, listen, who would have thought 15 years ago or 20 years ago that this whole genre would exist, that we would all be so fascinated by these women and by these shows that Bravo has put forth, and you get to be at the forefront of breaking some of this news, talking to these people that we want to hear from. That is a huge service.
Again, I will take it.
It's okay. So listen, we're going to get into the breaking news of today about Bethany's interview with Rachel Leviss. But I was just thinking of, like, I was looking at a bunch of your interviews. Is there ever a world in which we could get an hour-long sit down with Brice and some of these housewives? Would you ever want that? Well, could we ever do an Entertainment Tonight produced podcast?
I will say a lot of the interviews are like 30 minutes, hour long, and then they get cut down. So so yes, to answer your question, that is possible. A podcast, sure, maybe. ET isn't quite in the podcasting space just yet.
Yes.
We've done one for The Last of Us. And I believe you can listen to the broadcast every day as a showcast. If you so care to, like, if you're not watching on TV, you can listen as a podcast. But yeah, I think it would make sense that these interviews could then go live as a podcast as well. And you get both the video and the audio, choose your own adventure. And I think the podcast space would be a cool way to put the extra stuff in that gets trimmed for time on the videos. But yeah, that's a conversation for a different day.
Yeah, by the way, let's do the contract right now. Let's get Bethany involved. We're going to work this out right now. No, I mean, because you're doing these interviews, and if they are 30 minutes, are you throughout the interview, those little alarms going off of that's a clip we can pull, that's perfect, that hit exactly what I wanted to?
Yeah, I've short answer, yes. I've been doing it long enough that I, in the moment, know, there's your headline or there's the thing that people are going to really react to. But then you also go into the interview with your questions of having an idea that this might be the question that people it resonates with people. But yeah, I did an interview this morning with Uba from New York Housewives, and she had a quote that I was like, oh, that is the thing people will take away from this.
Well, but you sat down with all the Real Housewives of New York ladies. You had all of them pretty much, and now you're getting to have certain one-on-ones. But what were your thoughts of the Roni ladies when you first met them?
Yeah, so I did Aaron, Jessel, and Brynn all together, and then I'm gonna work my way through Uba, Sai, and Jenna, hopefully. I really enjoyed them. I'm really enjoying the show. I think they really tapped into a group of women that it feels like a different show, but it's still New York is still the seventh housewife, which I appreciate. I enjoyed them. I think Bryn's a breakout star. I think Aaron's the central nucleus to this group. And Jessel to me is the greatest surprise as the episodes keep going. I'm because she is a fashion publicist, so she's very much concerned with the image of her clients and protecting an image sort of thing. So I didn't know fully what to expect from her. And she was the most reserved in the interview. And then to see just kind of how wacky she is on the show and the things that come out of her mouth, I'm like, oh, you were really meant to be a housewife.
But isn't that cool that I think Housewives fans, especially, it's like not just like who plays well overall, but like the Jessel is almost now being celebrated by the fandom for saying these like kind of bold, audacious things that she is potentially not thinking about in the moment. But Housewives fans are like, yes, girl, yes.
Exactly. And the fact that, they filmed this, 9 months ago, 10 months ago. And so the women had one reaction. The fans are having a very different reaction.
Yeah.
It's like, this is why these shows are fascinating.
Yes, I kept thinking about that, and you have like a front seat to that. As I was trying to explain to my audience, as we will only get this first season with the Roni ladies once, because now they have the experience of like sitting down with Entertainment Tonight. They have the experience of going to this next BravoCon. They have the experience of reading all of our reactions, and that changes these housewives, as you see, or Vanderpump Rules cast members. It changes them.
Yes, when they watch themselves on the show, they go and change their entire appearance. Though I think the New York ladies are like pretty set. Like, I don't think any of them need to make, not that anyone needs to make a tweak, but I don't think they will be making any tweaks. But yeah, I think the fan commentary then can scare people in their second season or embolden them in their second season, and the dynamics change, especially when they get a read on like who's the fan favorite, who's the standout, and kind of maybe the dynamics that don't stand up within their friendship circle, but are the dynamics of the characters they're portrayed as on television. It totally changes the game. And then if they choose to insert more people into it, that also changes it.
Yeah, because we live in a world now where the second season, they could pull a clip from your interview with Uba, and she says something potentially upsetting to one of these ladies, and then we will get now an episode revolving around like podcast interviews or television interviews. And I think that's so interesting. But that's why I like this first season, is that none of that is at play. So you get to see actual dynamics.
Yeah, the fourth wall has slowly been chipped away at, that they now reference their fame and the fact that they get talked about. I just got eyes on the Salt Lake City premiere, and there's a whole thing about that in the season 4 premiere. So yeah, that's also, I appreciate that Bravo is letting that now be part of the conversation, because I do think there was a disservice for a long time in ignoring the publicity machine that comes along with these shows. New York, though, was always the one that like they talked about Page 6 from day one, because Page 6 was not what it is now, where it's like the Housewives gossip machine day in, day out. It was like just following these socialites who were the women of season 1 through 4 of that show.
Yeah, no, you're dead on. Speaking of like, I saw the premiere of Southern Charm, which I'm sure you did, which comes out in a couple weeks. And I just got in the mail the Salt Lake one, but I didn't get to watch it because of this whole Bethany Frankel thing. But as a newsman, how do you approach this job day to day? Of like, you get this in your box, do you watch it immediately? Do you sit there and like kind of go, okay, what would the audience want to hear? What do I need for my job? How do you piece together, and how do your personal feelings interject into all of this?
Yeah. When it's the premiere episode, I usually watch it a couple times. Like, I'll watch it if I have time on the day I get it, and then I'll watch it again whenever we've set up an interview, just so that I have like what is in that episode most top of mind, because usually first interviews are tied to the premiere, and so you want to answer a question that maybe the premiere set up, sort of thing. And then week to week, like I tend not to watch the screeners unless I have an interview set up. Otherwise, I kind of let myself enjoy the show as a fan and watch it like on television and on my DVR. Personal feelings being in this job, I'm able to compartmentalize of like how I might feel, and then I give everyone grace of like, no one is coming on these shows to make themselves look bad. And so you have to try and see every time you're talking to somebody from their perspective and give them a chance to explain themselves for those moments that don't necessarily make sense. So
yeah,
I've been in it so long, it's hard to know how I would function if I was having a lot of personal opinions and thoughts about it, because I truly just kind of let it wash over me.
Yeah, that's probably smart. Coming off of this season of Vanderpump Rules and Scandival, we are now at an all-time high, and today is a perfect reminder of that, of the passion and the intensity of the fandom right now, and how that is now washing over the cast and Bravo as a whole. Do you ever, or like, what's it like pitching to Entertainment Tonight? Like, do you want to get involved in the reality reckoning mess? Do you want to have that sit down with Bethany to like, let's get these points across? Is this something that, you know, you want to get some sort of interview to for the Entertainment Tonight viewers?
Well, we did an interview. I didn't do it, but Kevin Frazier, our host, did an interview with Bethany when this all kind of started, where she explained all her points. Yeah. And then in the people I've spoken to, not everybody, but people who have been in the game for a while, I'm asking their thoughts on it. I think we need to get to a place where something's actually happening to then have a different conversation. So a lot of people have called the letter that went out a lawsuit. There is no lawsuit, at least not yet. That letter was likely a warning shot that litigation is to come, because it was essentially like, do not destroy any evidence that may, not even evidence, because it's not a criminal case, but don't destroy anything that might be necessary for the discovery of a case on these topics. I do think the unionization of reality stars is admirable. I doubt it will ever happen. There are a lot of hurdles to get there, because reality television is, at its base level definition, a version of documentary. I know there can be a lot of conversation in the like weeds there, but like on paper, take it down to the base level. They're called docu shows, docu soaps. So you can't unionize documentary subjects. Unions also typically have a structure where you do X amount of jobs to then be eligible to join the union before you can't do any more jobs without being a member of the union. I don't know how you would swing that kind of structure in reality TV, because no one's going to get to film 3 episodes and then be like, now I'm joining the union, because it's also like those shows are not going to air for months. There's a lot of moving factors. To me, again, I think it's admirable. I think Bethany should have just like launched a boutique talent agency or a boutique law firm and helped people with their contracts. That would probably be the most actionable way, and a structure that would work for her, and then also keep her in the conversation. But I just
which seems to be a key element, is keeping her in the conversation. Like from a fan, it looks like she wants to be really at the forefront of this conversation, but I'm still a little confused. And I think a lot of us are, of what the actual conversation is, are we talking mental health? Are we talking unionization to get more residuals? Like, is it a mixture of everything? But then you put this Rachel interview out, which, by the way, Anthony Dominic from Entertainment Tonight just broke that Bethany did not pay Rachel for these 3-part interview, which was another interesting wrinkle, because I was like, oh my God, there's no way she's not getting paid for this, because Bethany's trying to prove a point. But it turns out she did not get paid. It's interesting.
Yeah, I would say most people don't pay for interviews. Like E.T. doesn't pay. Bethany's never paid anybody from an interview. So I wasn't surprised to hear that. But it is interesting, because obviously Bethany is going to profit off of the success of that podcast, and that episode.
Her story, Rachel's story.
Yeah. But maybe there's been private promises on the back end of, as they enter whatever this fight turns into, because while Rachel hasn't come out and outright said she's joined Bethany's reality reckoning, all signs point to like they are working closely together on this. I would be interested to know who's actually signing themselves onto it, because I highly doubt anybody actively under contract or filming a show is going to go anywhere near that.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually like with any job, you're not allowed to speak about your employer. Well, you know, and by the way, Paige DeSorbo was tagged in this initially. She removed the tag and said she did not have a conversation with Bethany Frankel. So I think I think it's a very interesting conversation to have. I just sometimes feel like it's scorched earth with Bethany, instead of what is the succinct points we're talking about. Are we talking about streaming? Are we talking about mental health? And the point with Rachel, while I was listening to the interview, was just that you weren't encouraged to have this 7-month affair that you kept hidden from everybody by the cameras. But once it did get revealed, it was fodder for the camera, which is what you sign up for in these docu soaps. So it's just a really interesting conversation.
Right. And I do think Bethany kind of explained Page Six reported that she had been actively attempting to sell a show to Bravo, and then she did a podcast explaining it. But I do think even after listening to her side of the story, it doesn't seem to work in her into the favor of whatever she's going to be pursuing, because if the treatment of talent is so despicable, or whatever the words they have been used in the legal letters, why would you want to get back into bed with any of these people not even 5 months ago? So I think we're in a space where there's a lot of talk, and not a lot of action or like even actionable items. But at the end of the day, is it just going to turn out to look like a bunch of disgruntled, fired / people who left of their own volition and now have like retroactive feelings to their experience? I don't know. It's interesting to watch. I talked to Candy Burris about it. She said,
because by the way, you got to watch this interview. It's on his Instagram, one of the clips of it. But you were talking about the Nene interview from Carlos King, right?
Yes. Yeah. So we talked about that. She responded to the suggestion she owes the fans a Phaedra sit down. She says she does not, and very, very directly says she does not. But her point of view was, sure, unionization, residuals, back end would be nice. But if you have a problem with how the show is made, how your job is going, talk to your boss in the moment. Don't stifle your feelings and then come when you're no longer getting a check and expect there to be resolution on that. And I think that's the perspective of a lot of people who are actively employed on these shows.
I think that's such an interesting point about like potentially revisiting how you felt about a situation in your life, which we all do, whether it be our own personal relationships or jobs. We do have different perspectives when we leave, or we might have felt taken advantage of. But it is interesting that a lot of these stories are happening after the fact and not during, and these issues aren't being brought up because Bethany came back to the Housewives, successfully came back to the Housewives.
Yes, which she's discussed many times, that she's come back and left, and the ratings and all the points she makes.
She's amazing. Yes. It's interesting. But now we are in this kind of weird litmus space with interviews like the Carlos King one with Nene and Bethany with Rachel. And I think that's why it was so interesting to hear Candy speak on this very intelligently, somebody that's actually in the cast and somebody that has used the show to do a lot of good in her own personal businesses, but also she would be doing her own personal businesses without the show. It seems like a perfect marriage that Candy has been able to accept.
Yes. And I do a question I would have for Bethany is, aren't you the exception that proves the rule, not the rule? Because her success is like 1 in a million. There's never going to be anybody else who can rep what she to do with the platform. People will be able to do a version of it, but no one's going to be able to do it the way she did. So is your experience really then like copy and paste applicable to all the people you say you want to help? I don't know that it is.
Yeah, one of her recommendations to everybody is just start a liquor brand, and then that will write that into the contract. By the way, I mean, like, listen, Kyle Cook has been on Summer House successfully pushing Loverboy every season, and I think to great effect. Now, not to the great effect yet of Bethany, because he has not sold that yet, but it is such a great, and I think he would tell you, it is such a great marketing tool for these products that you want, if you have a real product.
Yes, he says that TV is their number one marketing arm of that brand, which has become pretty ubiquitous. It is in like every liquor store in the country now. So, and I'm not sure he has the like Bethany clause carve out. I don't know personally. I haven't seen his contract, but I do think there is a mutually beneficial thing of, you're on this network, it has given you a great platform and you use it to the full advantage. There can be like a symbiotic sharing. It does not have to be, us versus them. I thought it was interesting, Rachel's comments with Bethany being like, the network's laughing all the way to the bank. I haven't seen a dime. But it's like, but you were surely paid your salary for the season. Not to say that maybe there should be compensation bumps for providing incredible content that results in even bigger ratings or something. But you were compensated. You have seen money. You were paid for what you filmed.
Yeah, TMZ reported that she earned $350,000 for season 10. I don't know, but I don't know if that's true or not.
I highly doubt that's an accurate figure. I don't know for sure, but that if anything, I would assume that would be the money she was making on like a 3-year contract, of which point I don't know where she would have been in that. But I highly doubt that was what she made for the one season of the show.
It seemed really high for knowing some of the reality show contracts and pay scales. That seemed really high, but I was like, maybe this is with Instagram influencer things baked into it. I couldn't tell, but it seemed a lot.
Yeah. I would take that number with a grain of salt. I do think in the grand scheme of things, she was probably paid well compared to like a school teacher in the middle of the country. Like,
yeah,
a relative salary she was probably still making a decent amount of money.
If football players, I don't watch sports, but I hear if they make the Super Bowl, they get paid. They get a bump for hitting the Super Bowl. Like who knows what these contract negotiations would have been in season 11, season 12. And, I know Tom wasn't in his contract supposedly, so he probably had to renegotiate for season 11. So I would be interested in those. But yeah, I mean, there probably would be performance-based bumps when you have this big of a scandal, but I don't know. Like when you're in a contract, people aren't just giving money away, these corporations.
Yeah, I don't know that they do like essentially performance based
good job, Jax.
bonuses.
Good job, Jax. Yeah.
But maybe that's part of the conversation that Bethany and her lawyer should be having of like, should there be language in these contracts for if there is totally unpredictable events that then result in a wild increase in ratings, a wild increase in interest in the show. Maybe there's a conversation there. I do think that there is language around like being paid for additional episodes. Like I believe you are paid per episode. So if they order another one or cut another one, you would get an extra check.
Or the supersize when it hits to Peacock. They were adding things with Vanderpump towards the end that I don't think Bravo could have ever planned for, but they rode that wave like you would if you have a good product. I think you ride that wave. I'm just very interested. Reality stars in general are a very unique lot because there's this argument of they don't know what they're getting themselves into, but they desperately want to get themselves into it. Like Rachel even says in this interview, I want, like even from a young kid, she wanted to feel special. That's why she changed her name to Raquel. We all want love and we all want acceptance, but these reality stars, there's an argument to be had, but at the same time, it's not holding that much weight anymore that they don't know what they're getting into when all we do is have examples of what they're getting into. And you interviewed Real Housewives of Orange County. I was thinking about, you had a funny clip with Gina about seeing Shannon Bedore's butthole, which is amazing. What a great soundbite. But I was thinking about Shannon Bedore these last couple of episodes, like, you can't talk about my relationship with John Jansen, and trying to tear the mic off. And I just think it's this interesting thing of, they're aware of what the show is, but still in the heat of the moment, the shows are still too much sometimes, it seems, for these housewives.
Yeah, I think if you are not willing to expose it all, do not go on these shows. Do not think you can go on, project a persona and a version of your life you want people to see. Like, because that's, the camera is going to catch you. The producers they're going to look for things that are not those things. And I did think it was interesting of Rachel, and it's a unique experience. It's a double-edged sword, but she was kind of speaking out of both sides of her mouth of like, I didn't know what I was getting into, but then you've been around this group for what, like 5 years. You've been on the show 3-4 seasons, and producers had told you, like, if you really bring it, this could be your year. So you kind of were aware of what you were getting yourself into then.
Yeah. And all of these people, like, you do want to do a good job in anything that you do. So, Rachel especially was like, yeah, I went on a bunch of dates on cameras, but that didn't mean she was having this 7-month affair for really bringing it to the show, because they both chose to hide it from the show. It's like two different things. Right.
And that's the thing of like, if you just show it all, then you can attempt to control whatever you can control once it's all out there. Because watching last season of Vanderpump was interesting as this hit, and then like the girls are on that Vegas trip, and had we not had the information of where things were in real time, you probably would have viewed that as like, oh, they were a little mean girly to her. They were excluding her the way this is cut together. But then we went into it having the knowledge of March 1st, 2023, and we're like, oh, she knows, because we're projecting all the feelings we have on her into that moment.
It's a really interesting way to watch a show when you get new information in the midst of a show running. So with like Orange County, you got Orange County, New York, Atlanta on right now. All of these other things, like I think OC, I'm loving it this season, not expecting to love it, and I'm loving it. But it's interesting in the wake of Scandival how us, the viewers, are approaching these shows, and we almost need these huge moments. Like I think almost Roni is the anti-Scandival. We were actually like leaning in and listening to these ladies' stories, which at its best, they champion these women's stories. But do we expect now too much from these shows as an audience member to the point where it will overall be detrimental in the end?
I do think we all need to like pull back and pare our expectations down to like petty drama. Because it's like the pendulum swung so far into like criminal indictment territory and prison sentences and victim settlements and all these extreme things that happen in people's lives that are not everyday occurrences, are not things that you can just like easily replicate others, and go and like pull back to the earlier years of when the Housewives really found its footing, when OC was in like season 5 and New York was in season 2, 3, where everyday drama is okay. I talked to last season for New Jersey to Melissa Gorga about this, because I think a commentary that comes a lot for her is like, what's your storyline? What is your life? And even Teresa's Namaste Bitches now viral TikTok sound of I went to prison on the show, and like listing all of these wild life events that have happened to her. Melissa's point of view was, why do we want people's lives to be falling apart? Can't people have like a decent life and also be good or fun TV? And I think that is the way we all need to go back into these shows. And I do think the network is kind of course correcting all of them into that way of, we had gotten into this place where it was big swing, big drama, one big drama. And we need a lot of little fires everywhere instead of one huge one somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, you're dead on right. I mean, you go from the Erica Jane season to the Jen Shaw season to like all of these big things, which by the way, Salt Lake, which like you said, premieres in a couple of weeks and you'll start interviewing these ladies. I mean, do we even touch, I know you don't need to say it in the episode, but will we ask these ladies about Jen Shaw? Like, how do we move on from something that is so big and get back to, okay, we've been haunted for these last 3 years, but let's just start anew?
This is hard to answer because there's a lot in the premiere, and I think the threat of Jen Shaw is going to still be something throughout this season. I don't know for how long, but there's a very interesting development dynamic, and one person has an interesting point of view on everything. So,
well, I predict that person is probably going to be Heather Gay because she swung so wildly one way, and it'll be interesting to see who is.
It's not Heather Gay.
Oh, wow. I was wondering if she was going to be the one of, I stood by her, but now it's done. I thought that might be the case.
That might be the case, but what I'm talking about is...
Wow. See, this is good. This is exactly what we need to like amp up the excitement for the show. But we do need to get it back to a point of, I think the reality show viewer needs to be like not worried that which amongst these ladies are going to be in jail by the end of the season.
Right, because that's also not good for the longevity of the show. If we're putting everyone away, who's going to be left?
So you also interviewed Kate Chastain recently because they now have Couch Talk with Captain Lee, which I'm like, I'm down. Kate Chastain is hysterical. I think she's like wildly funny, and I'm always down to hear her takes on Bravo. What was your experience interviewing her this time? Because she's now a new mom.
Yeah. So I just love that she will forever be in the Bravo sphere. Like, she's been off Below Deck now something like 4 years maybe, and she has remained a full-on Bravo celebrity. So she came back and did a Project Runway guest judging stint, and then they announced Couch Talk. I think Kate is like the perfect mix of she's been in the Bravo machine. She understands what it means to be a Bravo celebrity, but then she's also a huge fan of the network and the programming. So she can speak really uniquely to the whole thing. I think it's funny to watch her and Captain Lee, because Captain Lee was not watching all these shows. Though Kate told me he was a huge fan of Don't Be Tardy, which I found surprising. So yeah, I mean, I love Kate, and I think she's hilarious, and her being a mom. And I think what Bravo needs to do is come up with a Kate and Sullivan mom and son show for us to watch.
I do love the people. I love the fact that sometimes Bravo will take a liking to certain people and keep them in the fold. I like that. Like, they're like, she can't work on a boat, but like, what else can we do with her? I like that kind of dynamic. Also, Below Deck Down Under, you guys, I keep talking about what I think is just such a really great season on top of a great show with Aisha and Captain Jason. And you would talk to Captain Jason, but it was before these episodes came out last week, which dealt with some really intense issues. And I thought, what a way to show that production really does step in right when they need to. And Aisha and Jason did the right things.
Yeah, I thought the timing of that was kind of wild, that you could not have planned the airing of those episodes with the conversation happening culturally around this kind of show. But I think it was a perfect example of like, here is how production protects talent without interfering in the kind of documentary aspects of these shows. And I wouldn't be surprised if any of this went to court, that I'm sure Bravo would pull that footage out to explain and show how they protect their casts.
No, it made me proud. I was like, okay, good. See, there are things in place. Like, we do, like, people learn, people like, this is how we do protect these people. So overall, there is this hand that will jump in when it is needed. And I thought that was fascinating, which I was really curious to get some of the cast. I would love if they could come back and do an interview with you again after this moment, because you got to interview them beforehand, before any of this stuff came out initially. And this is the stuff I wish was highlighted.
Yeah, I think you'll get your wish granted at some point.
Okay, good. Are you going to do BravoCon this year? Yeah,
of course.
Okay, good. I mean, that's like a who's who of every, like, you probably, your head is spinning during that time. It's too much.
To me, it's like the most fun because it's just your brain is like on all day. The way my BravoCon is not the BravoCon that all of you get to experience. I'm like in a room huddled away somewhere for 12 hours talking to people. But it's like, it's a non-stop carousel of just Bravo talent coming through, and you can ask them anything you can think of it within like a 2-minute, time frame. And so it's nice to also, so many new Bravo celebrities started during the pandemic when everything was virtual. And so nice to get FaceTime with people and actually have human interaction and not just through a screen interaction.
Yeah, what are you talking about, Brice? This is all screen action. When's the last time you've been starstruck? Doesn't have to be with a Bravo celebrity. It could be with anybody.
Oh. I don't have an answer for that one. I would be starstruck for people like Oprah. Yeah. But I don't know. When someone is standing right in front of you, you're like, oh, you're a human. Your clothes are wrinkled. I can see a pimple on your face. You had an onion bagel for breakfast. Like, you can, the walls can come down. So maybe I'm just jaded for being in this job for so long that it's commonplace for me. And I do sometimes have to pull back and remind myself, like, what would like 18-year-old you think of what you're going to do? Like, I remember last summer, my boss was like, hey, are you in the office today? And I was like, no, I had to stay home because it's the only way I could work out walking my dogs before I had to go to Kathy Hilton's house. And she was like, imagine going back and telling like first year journalism school you that sentence. Yeah. And I was like, this is great perspective.
Yeah, that's, you got to screenshot that and like frame that. That is like such a, gonna go eat caviar and baked potatoes with Kathy Hilton. Well, coming off of Beverly Hills, by the way, as we start winding down here a little bit, Beverly Hills is already firing on all cylinders, even way before we even have a trailer or release, because now they are doing the Scandal. It's the same production company as Vanderpump, you guys, Evolution Media. They picked back up cameras for whatever the Kyle of all, the Kyle and Mauricio, like have we gotten interviews with Kyle or Mauricio or anybody yet? And looking forward to that. Are you already planned?
I will be very excited to touch base with Kyle whenever that happens. I don't think this is going to be Scandal. I do think it was kind of like it became such a media story that they wanted to capture that. But from what I've heard, this is kind of something that unfolds over the course of the season and is explored / maybe not explored to all the women's liking within the events of the season. I did just sit down with Erica at her Bet It All on Blonde rehearsal, so that will be coming out.
You've seen some of the rehearsal then?
I have seen it, and you guys, she's putting on a fucking show. She is coming through and proving people that there's something there.
So you actually got to go see her do a rehearsal and then talk to her afterwards.
Yes. I haven't seen like the full, whatever it's going to look like at the House of Blues. It's like a black box kind of dance studio thing, but there was a version of her stage there. Her dancers, backup singers. She's pulling out all the songs She's singing live.
Wait, Brice, she's singing live?
Yes. The mic was on, Ryan. The mic was on.
Wow. That's actually, that to me, I would think she would totally use a backing track, but that's huge to me.
The mic was on.
What a season for Rinna to not be here for. I mean, like you could have had Rinna championing Erica, but you could have also had Rinna trying to get to the bottom of whatever Kyle and Mauricio are going through.
I'm very interested to see what the dynamics are like without Lisa, because I think Lisa was a very good housewife for a very long time. I think that last season she got a little lost in the sauce of what it meant to be. Like she could not pull herself out of it.
Yeah.
She was lost in Harry's sauce. Like she could not. I think she was just Lisa. As long as we've known Lisa on the show, once she has made up her mind about something, she's like set on that is. Like, this is the truth I need to expose. And
kind of like Bethany.
And it was kind of just like, you could have let this mouse go, but we didn't. And it ultimately was the reason for being put on pause.
Yeah.
But I'm interested to see what the dynamics are like, because that was Erica's closest confidant in the group. I think people forget, I had forgotten, Erica only joined the show a season after Rinna. It feels like there was a whole version of the show with Rinna, like a whole era that was Rinna's era, but Erica came in 1 year after Rinna and Eileen joined. I'm interested to see if there's been changes in Dorit and Kyle's dynamic, because they seem to be hanging around each other less, or at least posting together less. This new woman, Anne Marie, there's been so much discussion of like what her beliefs and values are.
Yeah, the new cast member.
And she started filming a while after the rest of them had started. So I'm also interested to see how they bring her in and insert her into the group. The fact that Kim Richards is back in filming.
We have Cynthia Bailey making appearances. We have
Denise Richards
and Aaron. We have Aaron, her husband. I saw him at a couple of events.
Wow. Aaron and those machines.
I can't wait to hear what he has to say about 5G. It's going to be truly, so that's something to look forward to. And then Vanderpump is now franchising everywhere, because we have the announcement of Peacock's Vanderpump Valley, or some sort of announcement where they're filming now with Jax, Dodie, Brittany, and those people. Are you going to be going to Jax's saloon that he just announced?
I did put in a request to get a tour of it whenever it is fully decked out and designed. But yeah, I don't know if people, I lived in Studio City for years, so its location is interesting to me because it's truly next to the one like sports bar on the
Rocco's, right? Right.
Yes.
Yeah, it's right there.
But I guess maybe that is good for business. It's like if Rocco's is really busy one day, then like the overflow can just head into Jax's. But
Jax's saloon.
We'll see. This was his dream. We can finally get our mouths on the beer cheese that I was like, this is coming out and it's not great. I'm interested to see whatever that spinoff show is like and what the dynamics and energy are. And I would have liked to have seen Stassi back on the show, because I do think she was always the nucleus on which everything kind of existed around.
Yeah, that was her actual personality, was that people were always around her trying to make her happy or fight with her.
Yes. So yeah. I know very little about that show other than kind of the details that are publicly out there, but I'm interested to see. I do think it's interesting to like try and capitalize on this moment and make the most of it.
Well, isn't it? I always tell the audience is like, what a difference a year makes. You know, you think about like somebody like using Jax or Brittany or Dodie. It's like a year ago, they could not have conceived to be where they are now, or to actually start collecting paychecks again from potentially this Vanderpump universe. And all it took was just one wild, horrible judgment call by two people for all of this to swing wildly back their way.
Well, even Vanderpump Rules, the OG show, I think people had started to write that off as the show's lived its life, like it doesn't work anymore. I do think last season proved that like it's no longer a show about people working at SUR, which is I think the concept they held on to for so long. Yeah. And so what being free of that, I think also really opens up what that show can be, even Scandival removed. That was, I think, the thing that was kind of holding it back.
Well, there's so much, not just Jax's Saloon, but now you have pretty soon within the next month, I think Something About Her is going to be opening, which I'm already listening to your interview in my head right now, what that's going to be about. And then you got Pump closed during this season that you're going to see on season 11. And the Pump sign now went up next to Tom Tom. It's like it's one big juggernaut of a restaurant, like Pump and Tom Tom signs within 2 feet of each other on I mean, that's
Santa Monica Boulevard.
Yeah, that's so Lisa Vanderpump.
Yeah, I do think people thought like, oh, she's turning the garden part of Tom Tom or the restaurant part of Tom Tom into Pump. I think it's just like we have this sign. It's kind of iconic. And we're going to introduce some of the like Pump touchstones to Tom Tom, like with bringing the brunch there. So I don't think it's like we're rebranding Tom Tom as Pump. I truly think it was just we have these giant letters that were on the corner of Santa Monica Boulevard for a decade that people recognize. Let's move them down the block.
I was like, this is a tax shelter. This is like she's hiding money. So no. And lastly, the person that heads all of this up, or like I guess the figurehead around Bravo, is still Andy Cohen. And I was just listening to his audiobook, The Daddy Diaries, and it's exhausting. His life is truly exhausting. He seems like he really enjoys everything, but to me, I was listening to it. I'm like, damn, he does way more in a day than I ever would. But I just always think about like what this dude. I mean, and I don't feel bad for him at all, but what this dude has to go through on a daily basis with so many huge personalities, something that he has brought this concept of Real Housewives that got so successful, but on a day-to-day basis, what this guy truly, I mean, I'm truly wondering what goes through his mind now of creating this whole genre.
I can only imagine. I do think probably the tougher part for him is everyone blaming him for everything the network does when he has not had a position at the network, I think, for almost 10 years now.
People forget that.
He's like, he has nothing to do with what is on the air at Bravo. He oversees as an executive producer. I don't even know. Overseas probably isn't even the right word. He contributes as an executive producer to the Real Housewives. And Watch What Happens Live. And that is it. Vanderpump Rules, Below Deck, Southern Charm, Married to Medicine, all these other shows. He has no say in them. So when I always see people tagging him and being like, we hate this, it's like, do better. Yeah. He has nothing to do with any of it. I do think he has something to do with like the success of the network and building up the brand as it's known. But I think when I interviewed him at BravoCon last year, I asked him like, does it frustrate you that everyone, because you are the face of the network, you then become the spokesperson for all things the network does? And he's like, it's not the worst cross to bear. Like if that is his lot in life, so be it. But
that was last year, Brice. That was last year.
Yes,
ask him again this year at BravoCon. Yeah.
I will. I do think people need to take that into account of like, you can come to him with problems with Housewives, but that is kind of it.
Yeah. No, it was just listening to this book. He was talking about the day he got that He got the lawsuit from Nene, and like he woke up to that and he was like, damn, like I always like Nene just truly has always been a legend. And we did this together. Like it was interesting to hear his thoughts and then have to like be like, okay, but I have to think of this from all angles. And then also hearing him, like he was the one that pitched that idea of splitting Roni Legacy, which is now Girls Trip, and then Roni the new cast. And it was fascinating to hear. He's like, he had to pitch the network these ideas.
Right. That's the other thing is, while he has a say in all things Housewives, he's not the only person making decisions. There are teams of dozens of people behind the creative behind these shows. And so it's like he gets, it's like voting probably, you know, it's like he gets to yay or nay ideas or come to the table with ideas for others to yay or nay, but he's not just coming in and being like, and here's the cast for next season, and here are the trips they're going to go on, and here's how we're going to fire this person. Like, but people think he does that.
But I mean, yeah, like you said, there's worse things to be. I mean, what an amazing thing. And Brice, you are amazing at this. You are truly somebody that I think is integral in all of this Housewives and Bravo stuff. I don't foresee a world in Bravo without you in it. So what else is coming? Like, no, for real. Like, I mean, I only try to ask you to come on this show like once or twice a year because I know, you know, I truly respect everything that you do. But what's going on the rest of the week for you? Like, how do you prepare? What do you got going the rest of the week job wise?
I think I'm done with shoots for the week. But, we've got an Uba chat coming your way.
Uba hot.
We've got an Erica Jane chat coming your way. There will be Salt Lake City stuff. There will be Southern Charm stuff. Hopefully, something about her. Something like the train will keep going. The content
never
will
stops.
keep coming. Yeah, so I don't know what to plug in this moment because I don't know when those things I shot will air.
I'm just plugging you. So you can find out all of this stuff at Brice Sandra on Instagram. I put that as always. It also gives you a link that takes you to the Entertainment Tonight website. And Entertainment Tonight has stepped up its game on all reality, not just shows, but just like pop culture in general, like their tweets, all this, like there's so much good stuff coming out of there that I do get a lot of my news now from Entertainment Tonight on Twitter on just breaking news and things like that. So it is well worth, I guess, no, you got to follow them on X or Instagram or whatever it is.
Well, I'll pass along that
please
nice feedback to our social team. They will be happy to hear that.
But thanks so much for your time once again, Brice. I really appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me. And truly, you can do it more than once or twice a year.
Okay. You heard it, Sandra. Let's hit them up every month. Okay.